if you don't have a VA, you are one.
Hello. Welcome back to the Wild Business Growth Podcast. This is your place to hear from a new entrepreneur every single Wednesday morning who's turning wild ideas into wild growth. I'm your host, Max Branstetter, founder and podcast producer at MaxPodcasting. And you can email me at max@maxpodcasting.com to save time with your high-quality podcast. This is episode 148, and today's guest is Tyler Gillespie. Tyler is the founder and thinking time chief at Productized.Services, and he has a very cool perspective and a very unique expertise on productizing your services, productizing your service business, something really neat to consider for any service entrepreneur out there. He has started, productized, and exited multiple businesses, including Content Pros and Applause Lab. And in this episode, we talked about everything involved in productizing your service business, including outsourcing, coming up with packages, systems, etc., etc., etc. We also chatted everything from a spin on meditating to salsa dancing to a certain popular board game, and of course, being fluent in Spanish. It is T from Productized.Services. Enjoy the show. Alrighty, we are here with the thinking time chief himself, Tyler Gillespie of Productized.Services, a real, I guess, thinking time chief of productizing your service business. He's had some really awesome steps along his entrepreneurship journey as well. Tyler, how you doing today? Thanks for joining.
Yeah, man, doing amazing. Happy to be here. Excited to share more around productizing and a whole bunch of other things too.
Yeah, I can't wait. Before we get into things, I do want to shout out our mutual buddy, Jackie Schiff from Podreacher. Jackie's awesome, and she literally cannot say enough amazing things about you. So thanks, Jackie, for connecting us in the first place. Shout out, Jackie.
Yeah, Jackie's awesome.
Speaking of awesome, I'm all about family businesses, and I know you have a really cool background with your family business as well. What was it like for you kind of getting your start, helping out your family business? And the business is in a really cool place in the vacation rental space as well.
Yeah, so started off with offline, probably unsexy service businesses. So yeah, my parents and family.
Hey, I thought every service business was sexy.
Exactly. Yeah, this offline business that my parents ran, I mean, there was mainly property management, maintenance, and then vacation rentals. So which they're still doing. They still have a few rental properties that they manage and own and rent out on Airbnb. And but yeah, that's kind of where I got my initial start, which was kind of fun. And I think that set, the foundation for a lot of the success I had later on with just online service businesses as well.
What were some of your favorite, I guess, perks of working with family?
Yeah, I think obviously, I mean, spending a lot of time with them. Specifically, my dad was awesome, and I still help him with stuff over the years, which is great. As well as just being able to we were able to run that business in a very special part of the country. So if you're familiar with Colorado, there's a ski town and mountain about half hour where I grew up called Aspen. Per home that has the most billionaires that own houses there. So you can think of it just a very affluent ski town in the mountains. So managing houses like that, very fun. You got to see just incredible places. You had to wash the Bentleys and Ferraris and, get the houses ready for people when they're coming in and out.
If I had a nickel for every Bentley and Ferrari I've washed, I mean, geez.
Yeah. So, you have to wash them and you got to test drive them, right? So make sure they're ready
just
to
to
go.
make sure they're clean.
Exactly. So yeah, I was able to do that quite a bit and then just learn a ton of cool skills, from fixing things to maintenance to mowing grass to everything a $20-30 million house requires to stay top of line,
And besides test driving sports cars, which not the worst hobby in the world, what would you say is kind of the biggest business lesson that you learned from that time working with your family?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think customer service was probably a huge thing, especially for like these high-end services. So like that really set the foundation of just like, who here's how you work with people, here's how to take care of people, here's how to create amazing experiences, and the importance of that when you're taking care of places like this. And that's something I've applied across the board for many of my other businesses that I've started and sold. So I think that was probably like a foundational kind of takeaway, even if I didn't realize it right away. Just those types of things subconsciously just kind of travel with you as you do your next moves, right?
Yeah, and travel with you. I mean, I'm all for puns. Travel with you. You have a great background from a travel standpoint as well. I mean, I know you spent a lot of time in Colorado, but you've also spent a lot of time in Medellin. I love the show Narcos, so obviously that's what I think of first with Medellin. But there's a lot more to the city and culture than that. How has your experience been in your time in Medellin?
Yeah, been super grateful to travel a little bit. I mean, I feel like I've traveled quite a bit, but it's still in my mind. I'm like, man, I haven't traveled really as much as I want. But I think comparatively, yeah, I've definitely been to some cool places. Medellin actually is where I live majority of the year. So that's really the home base per se. Yeah, first time 2012, went down there with a buddy, and was still trying to figure out that online type of work. That's really what I think transitioned me from offline services to online, was just this love for travel. And I was like, all right, obviously I'm really great at the service business thing, but the offline services, kind of trap you geography based, right? So you're stuck in a certain location. That's what really kind of pushed me to start just testing the waters online with all sorts of different things. That was one of the first moves we made. Was a buddy of mine and myself went down to Medellin for a 3-month trip. Yeah, man, that's kind of what started it off, and my first connection with the city, and loved it. Latin culture, eventually made it back down there and moved there full time.
And what is it? I know there's probably millions of things. I forget how to say million in Spanish, but million in Spanish of things, millones,
Yeah.
that draw you back to Medellin. What's the top thing that was kind of love at first sight for you?
Yeah, I think obviously weather was amazing at first, and it still is. It's like 70 to 80 degrees year round. So for me
Jeez.
growing up in Colorado, it was like once I stopped snowboarding as much, as you get older, you kind of do some of that stuff less. I was like, all right, I'm ready to be kind of more of a snowbird. So that was the perfect transition. So you still have mountains. Medellin was obviously in a huge change, far from the narco type of background that it used to have in the 90s. And now it's just beautiful country, amazing people, great food, weather. Obviously, cost of living's a huge bonus. So I think those things all kind of attracted me there originally, and then it's just a very evolving city and growing a lot and going through a lot of changes. So when you're in that specifically, it's a very exciting kind of city to live in, because it has so many positive changes going on over and over again throughout the years. Ever since I've gone there, every year is a little different. And now it's all about the network. Not only a great place to live, but there's a huge community of just really high level entrepreneurs traveling down there. So that's been a huge part of it as well.
Well, it sounds fantastically wonderful. That's one word, and it seems like you've found a wonderful home there. I think it's good incentive for anybody who works with you to come and do an in person visit sometime, because that's not a bad place to visit somebody. So let's get to productizing your service business. There's so many entrepreneurs out there. I mean, I'm one of them, so this is very close to home. So many entrepreneurs that offer service and kind of love the service lifestyle, love the service business, love that part of being an entrepreneur. But productizing can go a long way. So for you, you've built multiple businesses, exited a couple of them. What was the first thing that made it click for you that I have to productize this business?
Yeah, 2014, Medellin, Colombia, running a full service agency, which was great because I had started kind of a marketing agency, right? And took a lot of the offline service things, applied it online, and learning a ton. But I think any full service agency or service business, whether you have an agency, consultancy, or you're a freelancer, you're going to eventually kind of run into a lot of the same issues that come with a service business. And I was encountering those firsthand. Kind of one of the triggers was just, man, constant fires, turnover with team, client issues. You're constantly juggling a lot of plates. The service business, fires and potholes. Yeah, so that with 2014 is when I reread Built to Sell, which is a great book by John Warlow.
More to come on that book, but
Yeah, the author's one of my favorites. And even though the book itself wasn't necessarily about productizing, it kind of hinted at that kind of term as a business model. And, it's all about systematizing how to actually structure your business now to make it worth more in the future. And they talk about an agency in the book and how it essentially packaged up its services and made that transition from more full service to more productized. The third time I read it, I'm a gluten for punishment, right? Like it just took 3 times to actually set home. And I think that November, my partner and I kind of were reading it together, and I was like, you know what, let's just dive all in and just productize our service. And at the time, that term and stuff wasn't really readily available, but we knew we wanted to kind of apply a lot of the stuff from the book. We literally that December, because it's usually a slower time with holidays, we cut literally everything except one service offering. Rebranded the whole company going into the next year, and that was like one of the huge turning points. And we officially kind of fully productized the business, and then that was a foundation that we ended up building that new productized service on the next 3 years before we sold it.
by the way, you said gluten for punishment, which I think needs to be the tagline for like a gluten-free brand. So I think you just coined something there.
Glutton, yeah.
Well, we'll give it to you. It works either way.
There we go. Yeah.
But it's really cool to hear about your transition and the transition of your company into kind of falling into that part that so many people, and I've experienced this myself, of like getting to that point of growing and growing, but over time becoming overworked and realizing that, hey, this isn't sustainable or scalable. I need to do something about this. It's awesome to hear what you did. When you're advising clients today and people that you coach and strategize with about productizing their own service business, what's the main reason you share why any entrepreneur who has a service business should be interested in productizing?
Yeah, really, it's for me, you look at and you study any service business that has scaled to any significant amount, whether it's revenue, size, et cetera, they've at in some level, whether they know it or not, have productized, systematized their business that has allowed it to scale. So a lot of founders, in that maybe doing 5 to 10K a month range, getting some traction as a service business, you're probably doing a lot of the work. And the only way that you're going to be able to kind of remove that scale ceiling that you've put on yourself, because you only have so many hours in a day, you're going to have to, build a team. You're leveraging technology and people typically in a service business. Those are two hard things, especially people, to manage and grow. And that's where you're going to get leverage. So you really got to get out of doing the one-to-one work, or like what I like to call the mechanism. And in the E-Myth Revisited, they talk about this a lot as well, but you got to get out of the doing of the delivery. And that's one of the initial hurdles that a lot of service businesses kind of struggle with, is going from doing the work themselves to having a team do it. So that's one of the big first shifts.
How do you do the undo, I guess? How do you get yourself out of being the doer so much?
Yeah, I mean, a lot goes into it. I think it's some part mindset, part intention, and then obviously execution. Some people are fine with running one person consultancies that end up growing with a small team, and they're very involved in the process. And you can still grow a decent sized business that way. But from an agency perspective or even freelancing, the more you can start taking baby steps towards starting to outsource more, right, and starting to bring on team members to help you execute the work. Part of it's also ego, letting go. No one can do this as good as me. You're probably familiar with or heard people say. And in reality, there are a lot of people out there, and you want people that can do it better than you on your team. So it's part of that. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but knowing that that's the hurdle you have to overcome is one of the first things. And then once you can do that, then you can actually start shifting energy into working on the business rather than in it. So that's one of the first huge hurdles.
It's so funny you say that. Recently, when I visited home, my dad and I had a meeting with a local business owner who is scaling pretty aggressively with a bunch of brick and mortar locations for his business. And it's a really cool business model. It's got a lot of potential to it, but the business owner basically said to us, like, I need to be like in person and involved in like everything. Like I can't scale me, but
Yeah.
like I need to be involved in everything. And my dad and I were looking at each other just like, as my dad said, he's really sharing the number one impediment to his own growth and his business's growth.
Yep.
That's such a common thing to see. I think outsourcing and delegating is a phenomenal way to kind of alleviate that, and it's a big step as you kind of transition your business this way. How do you think about outsourcing?
I mean, who equals leverage, right? So we have to kind of just approach it in small steps. So typically I outsource from like the inside out. Typically as the founder, you should be most founders are great at sales, or they start to be. If you're not, then you need to outsource that. But typically I outsource my best skill last. Whatever you're great at, do that. Keep doing that until you have all your weaknesses outsourced and delegated. But I usually start with like a VA, right? Because if you don't have a VA, you are one. That is, one of the first things to free up time, prevent yourself from doing a lot of like low leverage tasks, even just part-time, someone part-time to just help with that. And then moving more into a full-time person that can provide a lot of time freedom to give you the ability to work on some of the more important things. So many people just, they end up spending majority of their day doing $5 tasks. It's just, that's a hard one to kind of break free from.
Yeah, what are some of those tasks? Can you share some examples?
Yeah, it's going to be different for everyone, but typically what I like to do to discover those is just keep track of everything you do every day, literally every task. I responded to this email, I, did this, I updated this on the website, I installed this email into my autoresponder, I, strategized on this. When you have an outline of all these things, then you can actually look at each one at the end of the day and determine like how much would it cost to have someone else do this. And very quickly, you can point out and highlight and bring to the surface all the small things that probably aren't worth your time to do, or something that a VA or $5 to $10 VA could actually help and take off your plate. So it's going to be different for everyone, but a lot of low leverage tasks, that people do a lot. Whether it's checking email, whether it's updating a CRM, stuff like that are initial things you can just really get off your plate. And then as it scales up, it really depends, because it's like, how much is your time worth? And if it can be done less by someone else, then technically you should delegate it, but it's a balance as well to discover and figure out what those things are. So kind of tracking and just really looking at the process of what I call like your day. And I still do this actually as well, is just literally have a list, start with number one, and I just write down everything I do throughout the day. And at the end of the day, you can just quickly highlight, and cool, I need to stop doing that. I need to get that off my plate, doing and delegating.
I like that tracking exercise. Ironically, it's like the tracking exercise is something that a VA could help with, but it seems like it could take some time in itself. What tips do you have for just kind of committing to it and being like, all right, I know this is the extra task of keeping track of everything, but how do I get myself to just commit to fully tracking this week what I'm doing?
Yeah, well, the desire's got to be there, right? I can't make anyone do what they don't want to do. So I think you have to realize that you got to know, first of all, like you got to bring to surface and to light what you could outsource first. So that's the first step in tracking and task tracking, just like counting calories. It's not something everyone wants to do every day, but when you work with a new personal trainer, they make you do that for the first week. The reality is you probably eat very similarly over and over again. So you don't need to track every day for the rest of your life, but you need a baseline. Just like work, you're probably doing very similar things. And a lot of it's habit based. So you have to, understand where you're at. So tracking and just writing down everything you do is a great initial action step. And then that gives you, shines light on what you can actually start outsourcing and what you should and shouldn't be potentially doing as well, based on how much your time is worth as a founder.
Definitely, and that's an amazing analogy because yeah, there's a lot of days that you eat similar things. There's a lot of days that you approach work similar things, especially if it's kind of like you have your Monday routine, Tuesday routine, Wednesday. Like there's some stuff that I'm sure for most business owners can really apply from week to week for the most part. Outsourcing is such a big part of this, but what are some other buckets when you think of productizing?
Yeah, obviously, like team building, outsourcing, getting out of the doing. One's just a mindset too. It's a shift going from like custom work to more an hourly based work and bespoke kind of projects to more fixed outcome driven work as well. So that's another big shift that you kind of have to make. That is a hard one as well, because a lot of people just get in trouble. They create scope creep when you're charging by the hour and everything's custom and you're writing proposals. And that's a big one to kind of shift, when you could still make good money and do that, but it's not going to be scalable when everything you do every time is different. So productizing in its essence is, packaging and selling your skill set or knowledge just like a product that you would buy, let's say on Amazon. So that's really kind of part of the process as well, is, how can you package up that service so people can buy it just like they would a typical product. So that's a lot of what I kind of share and help people with as they work to move in that direction.
It's funny because when you hear packaging, you literally think of products. And in this
Yep.
sense, it's kind of virtual packaging. What tips do you have in this virtual packaging ballpark for making sure you're creating something that's attractive, but also works well for your business and your workflow?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you package something up, it creates constraints, clarity around what you do and you don't offer, right? When you buy a product on Amazon, it's very clear what you're going to get, when you're going to get it, what's in it, what it looks like, how much it is. When you have constraints like that, all of a sudden now it helps you structure what you're doing. So, starting from the end in mind, it's going to require you to say no and for you to refine things around what you do. And I think that's a good thing as you work to kind of package what you do. And then from there, you can go a lot of different directions, right? Once something's packaged, you can have add ons, you can have different things that people can additionally buy. But just kind of staying in that productized kind of mindset can help with the structure, and it makes things a lot more less variable and more consistent for you and the customer as well.
And how do you know kind of early on, once you've created these beautiful, lovely packages, that they are, packages and plans that do resonate with clients?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So, I mean, when you're on that journey, right, of like going from freelancer to consultant to agency or whatever that roadmap is, typically what I'm helping people do, like, unless you're just starting a productized service from scratch, you got to do some discovery, right? You have to go out there and talk to people and see what they like, see what they don't like, see what is working in the market. But oftentimes, a lot of people who I'm working with, they're transitioning, right? They've been doing consulting and running an agency for a while. They hate it and they want to rip their hair out, and they want something more predictable and productized. So it's more of just like looking, hey, like, this is what happened actually with my agency. Was we were doing a ton of everything under the sun, and when we went to productize, we were just like, okay, what do people ask for a lot? What are we already doing that people are paying for? What are people paying for on a recurring basis? What is easy to kind of teach and what's repeatable? And we ended up kind of filtering down everything and cutting everything out except, long form kind of thought leadership articles. And that's what ended up becoming content pros. But a lot of people can start there, right? Because you already are doing X or a variety of different things in your business. And so now it's just more of filtering down and then better packaging and positioning what you've already been offering, just in a repeatable way. That's often the path that a lot of people will kind of find themselves in, if that makes sense.
It does. So many of the examples that you share are kind of involved in auditing yourself and auditing your business. Like there's a real kind of introspective approach to productizing. And then I think kind of on the, let's say like you're somebody that has done these steps and gotten your business to a good point that it's much more productized. Where do you spend your time now that all of these kind of minor and minuscule tasks are off your plate, things are kind of packaged properly? What should your main focus be in terms of building your business once you have kind of worked out some of those kinks?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like a ladder of things you're going to be moving towards, right? Because I mean, once you've got people doing low lever tasks, then you've got yourself out of doing the mechanism of the business or the delivery of the service, and then you've gotten yourself out of managing it and managing those people. Then you're just moving more into working on the business, right? And this is where everyone wants to be. It's still work, but you're more strategy, more guiding the ship. Dialing in finances, dialing in growth and marketing. So there's a lot of hats people wear inside their business. So that's why it's so important to get out of the one-to-one work So you can start optimizing the other things and actually growing the business. And then, of course, yeah, next level up is, having someone else come in and manage the business, and whether that's a CEO or someone to actually take over your role, and maybe then you step into more of an advisor role. So there's always these levels of progression you could move up. What's great is when you're working on the business, it also typically means you're doing more of what you love to do anyways. And you can kind of better design the business to fit what you really like to do, and do more of that as well. So I see that's a very common kind of place to be.
There's so many things that are surprising as you learn as you get into the business world. But I think one of the strangest, but yet most beautiful things is kind of the idea of starting a business that you want to get yourself out of one day. Like, it doesn't make sense at surface level, but once you get into it, it's a really nice thing. And when you think about the businesses that you've productized, as well as when you're advising your clients with productized services, what would you say is the number one most helpful move that you've made, decision that you made to productize a business, looking back on it?
Like the progression, yeah, like of just getting out of one-to-one work, getting more working on the business versus in it, and then positioning the business in a way that actually is like a product. Those are like not small hurdles either. They're all varying degrees, and depending where you're at and available resources, some people can sprint really quickly, and other people it takes time. Like for me with my writing business, I never wrote one word for a blog post the entire time we ran that business,
Oh my God.
which is surprising to some people. But for me, I just skipped over the doing and outsourced it immediately. And a lot of people do the writing, and it takes them longer to get out of that and hand it off to someone else. But for me, that was just naturally how it was, and that made me be able to move a lot faster in the progression of getting out of the work, working on the business. So that's kind of, initial things to kind of focus on that are probably the most important. And then there's obviously all sorts of nuances and different little things you can optimize throughout that process as well. And those are the details that kind of unique to each person, but that's kind of, I guess, how I think about it.
As Fleetwood Mac said, you can get out of your own way. Those are the official lyrics. Don't look them up. If you are interested in freeing up some more time for yourself, and you would love to have a podcast or improve the podcast that you already have for your business, for your brand, email me at max@maxpodcasting.com. I will help take lots and lots off your plate, help you save time with your high-quality podcast. It's truly amazing what you can do with those hours once you free them up, and you're not spending hours on hours every day editing, working on marketing elements for the podcast, etc., etc., etc. Email me at max@maxpodcasting.com to save time with your high-quality podcast. Now, let's dive more into the mind of Tyler. But before that, probably the best joke you've ever heard. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's get to productizing your creativity. No, I'm just kidding. But a segment of inspiration and creativity. Think about things that inspire you, ways you stay creative. We've talked so much about the productizing aspect that we didn't really get too much into the details about kind of your own entrepreneurship journey. But, between Content Pros, Applause Labs, some of your other businesses, you've built some amazing businesses and scaled them and sold them in the space of writing, as you mentioned, in the space of testimonials, like lots of really cool stuff you did. That's a ton of stuff on your plate and a ton of time commitment. And, I'm sure you put your heart and soul and passion into that for years and years. What are your favorite ways to unplug, take some time off, make sure that your mind is in its best place so you can come back and attack things the next day?
Yeah, no, I think over the years you practice and you work on different ways to kind of approach that. For me, there was this Tom Billio of Impact Theory. He has a great kind of approach called thinkitating. And instead of meditating where you're trying to meditate and clear your mind and not think, he suggests going into meditation with a very specific intention and thought. And actually, specifically, that's all you do is think about that and just focus. I actually walk a lot. What's great about Medellín and just even in Colorado is I purposefully live like half an hour from a cafe, and I'll just walk every morning So that's almost a recharge, thinkitating kind of meditating type of practice. Love that. And obviously, when you're in a beautiful place, that helps. I also play a lot of chess, a lot of basketball to stay active physically, chess to stay active mentally. So those are kind of hobbies or things that love doing as well.
I like the strategically giving yourself some sort of a commute to the cafe.
Yeah.
There is something nice there. I find myself in the same space where if I'm obviously I'm working from home like all the time. If I find myself like a day or two that I'm like, oh my God, I didn't get outside. I
Yep.
need to take a walk around the block, go to the gym, go for a run, something like that. Because take a 20-minute walk without your phone and like without any sort of tie to technology on a nice day, it's like some sort of superpower or something. Like it just reinvigorates you. Like there's something really, really special about that. And I imagine that's amplified when it's to a nice little cafe in Colombia.
For sure.
Chess and basketball is a neat combo there as well. How'd you get into chess?
I originally I used to play with my dad when he got home from work when I was little. So he kind of taught me the ways, and then honestly, I didn't play it for a while until probably 2, 3, 4 years ago. My girlfriend actually in Colombia, she was in chess club. She's actually really really good. She kind of got me back into it, and then I started just playing a lot and found a few friends. And not a lot of people I know play chess, so it's one of those sports. It's a little more unique, but yeah, just started playing as much as I could in Colombia and with friends, and obviously you can play online now, which is great. But I love in person chess and just going outside to the park or something. And so it's just kind of it's fun, man. It's a very challenging sport in itself, but I've enjoyed just kind of practicing, learning more strategies. And there's so many parallels, right, between chess and business and life planning and making moves, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves ahead. It's cool.
I don't know. I think you need to come up with the productized chessboard. There's a branding opportunity there. And I think a lot more people are going to get into chess because of Queen's Gambit.
Oh yeah,
Kind of a
yeah,
chess show that came out of nowhere and people are obsessed with it. So I think it's going to grow, only going to grow in popularity.
yeah, 100%.
What about on the resources side? So you mentioned Built to Sell, you mentioned the E-Myth, you mentioned some books that have been really instrumental to the way you think and the way that you approach business. What other way, like, are there some sites that you find yourself looking on for insight or favorite people to follow, anything like that? How does that shape out for you?
Yeah, so to be honest, I listen to some podcasts, audiobooks, more entertainment type stuff. I think on the business side, there's really like one power book I'd recommend that just like game changing in all aspects. Where like if this was the only book you read, you would just be in a really really good position. And it's actually called The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. Great title.
Great. Yeah, I was going to read my mind.
Yeah, yeah. So Keith Cunningham, if people are familiar with the Rich Dad Poor Dad kind of book series, Keith Cunningham is actually the Rich Dad the book was based off of,
Huh.
and he's like Tony Robbins' right hand financial guy. Anyways, brilliant business thinker. He's actually one of the guys I got his thinking time process from. Credible book, or especially around anything and all things business. And honestly, I haven't read any book that would even compete or compare. So I just honestly this year I have that book by my desk. It's like I don't really need to read anything else. What's the point? I'll just keep rereading this one. So that was kind of my thing this year. Instead of trying to read a ton of books, it's just literally reading one book over and over. So that's the book.
I need to get on that because a lot of times I find myself on the road stupid. So I think that could help.
Yeah, there you go, man. Got to get off that.
Speaking of cleverness, if that's even a word, let's get to a fan favorite segment called the Wild Business Shout Out of the Week.
The Wild Business Shout Out of the Week!
While I know that the harmonica less stupid. Wild Business Shout Out of the Week. This is where we talk about a brand creative campaign that caught our attention, some really cool creative marketing. There's something Growth Tools did in a pop-up nature that sounds really breakthrough. You mind taking us through that?
Yeah, and I don't know if it was necessarily crazy breakthrough. I think sometimes the simple things are really effective. So one email list I really enjoy. I'm actually part of their kind of Growth Tools University, but growthtools.com. They have a great email series I really enjoy, very valuable. I don't subscribe to a ton of emails. I try to kind of pick through and just find ones that resonate. I think probably for my type of business it fits. So maybe not for everyone, but they were doing like these pop-up workshops. So just on key subjects or monthly themes that I thought was kind of cool. So just kind of out of nowhere, they would just kind of do these pop-up workshops. It could be that day. You don't get the recording, you don't get anything. It's just more, hey, come to our workshop and check this out. And that's kind of the allure to it. It's kind of this like kind of random special type of thing. So it sparked ideas just as far as like things I could do, or anyone could do just with their email list. They're kind of fun. These like almost these scarcity bound value offers that you just kind of bring to your list, etc. So that popped up literally in my head, and I enjoyed that one. Just the idea around that and how you can potentially bring value to your email list as well.
I dig that. And what I find fascinating is I think a lot of what you've talked about is very thought out, strategic, it's structured, some clear routes to it. But this example is pop-up. Like it's totally out of nowhere. I mean, these are webinars that seemingly didn't exist a little while beforehand, and then it's like they're gone. So there's that real scarcity aspect. What is it about this nature of like pop-up / scarcity that you think resonates with people?
Yeah, I think the idea of scarcity kind of in your marketing, fact that it's not going to be there again, or it's time bound, or it's going to disappear, kind of creates this interesting allure. And I think, yeah, people have been doing it a while, and I think you got to be like honest with it too. Some people like have these fake countdowns, and hey, that's limited for this. We're only in theaters, and of course it's also gonna come out on video, etc. So you see that stuff all the time, and people can kind of see through it. But when you can do it real, like do it for real, it definitely creates this kind of unique experience, especially with like business content. I think can kind of be unique.
And the unique is, I think, what everybody should strive for. Like there's so much, everybody talks about like that sea of sameness, and I do like alliteration. So yeah, all for it. But there's something really cool about being unique, and it applies to your business as well. So from unique to unusual, let's get to the unusual. Talk pet peeves, quirks, weird talents. What is a quirk? Maybe something your girlfriend or somebody calls you out for that's a little quirky about your personality, but it's who you are.
I don't know what it is. I cannot, like, I get up so early in the morning. She hates that. I'm just always been an early riser for whatever reason.
Local time, how early are you talking?
Oh, like 4:35.
Oof. Oh, that's like military.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, 5 a.m. is pretty normal. I think that's just maybe it's conditioned.
Besides waking up at like nighttime for some people, what is a weird talent you have? Something that doesn't really have an impact on your business, but you're just good at, you have a knack for. Besides chess, I won't let you say that one.
One thing that I picked up is salsa dancing. So that's kind of an interesting one. Tall white guy, definitely not a common or thought of skill, but yeah, salsa dancing, bachata dancing, as well as kizomba, which is pretty fun. But yeah, those three are definitely like more unique, not anticipated skills that I just picked up living in Latin America, and obviously speaking fluent Spanish. So it's those are kind of fun.
In El Pregunta, no, I thought I'd break out some. I don't even know if it's El or maybe it's La Pregunta. You can tell my Spanish needs to be brushed up. But the next one, después, pet peeves. What is your pet peeve grande?
Yeah, man, I think I'm super organized, and maybe I got this from my mom, but yeah, I just can't stand things disorganized, dirty, and maybe that's helped me in business as well. It's just like, man, I gotta have organized, on point SOPs, clean training.
Yeah, can't have a dirty business.
No, man. So clean finances, but those things are for real, man. You don't make your bed, you don't clean your room, or you have a dirty house, like that's going to translate into probably you don't keep up your books and you don't organize things in the best way. So there's a lot of crossover there that I think small things roll into bigger things.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you as well. Like, and I'm kind of like an organized freak as well, as far as like clutter and things like that. So
yeah.
All right, let's wrap up with some rapid fire Q&A. You ready for it?
Let's go.
All right, let's get wild. What is your favorite dance move you can share from the like salsa, bachata variety that you love now?
I mean, yeah, honestly, I don't even know the names of most of the salsa moves. It's just more practice, dancing memory. I was going to say muscle memory. There's definitely some combos I'd have to show you, but salsa probably is my favorite, strongest dance. Yeah, ton of fun.
And on the salsa note, you mentioned you're fluent in Spanish. What was helpful for you in that process becoming fluent?
Oh, Spanish girlfriend, Colombian girlfriend by far.
There you go. That will do it. What about chess? What is your favorite chess piece?
Ooh, favorite chess piece is probably the horse. I have to say the horse. Unsuspected, dangerous, very dangerous.
What is a food that you literally didn't know existed, but is at least somewhat more common in Colombia that you're all about now?
Yeah, it's like the Colombian passion fruit is like it's called maracuja. They put it in ice cream and all sorts of things. That's pretty amazing. I didn't eat a ton of papaya. They have, I mean, papaya coming out of their ears down there. So I have a lot more, have a lot more papaya. So yeah,
That
there's
is a hell of an image.
yeah, there's just yeah, I mean abundance. I mean like so yeah, all these kind of tropical fruits. Climate there is amazing. So that's definitely maracuja and papaya, probably two fruits that I didn't eat a ton of or even really know of, especially maracuja, the passion fruit. So that's fun.
And I have Medellín coming out my ears. If someone is to visit Medellín, what's the number one thing they have to do besides go salsa dancing with you and your girlfriend?
Obviously, Colombia is known for its coffee, so yeah, some sort of coffee tour, local coffee shop, to get the kind of the full experience is pretty amazing. Probably recommended the first thing. There's also a ton of like cacao, so a lot of chocolate comes out of Colombia as well. That's kind of fun. And then lastly, most people don't know Colombia is the number one exporter of roses
Oh,
in the world. So they even doing a flower plantation tour is pretty fun.
roses all around. Well, I'm sending you a virtual rose, Tyler. Thank you so much for sharing your tips, your stories, your Spanish pronunciation corrections, and all the above. Really, really appreciate all your lessons and tips. Where is the best place for people to connect with you, and if they're interested in getting some help productizing their own service business?
Yeah, no, man, I appreciate it. This was fun. And yeah, I put together a playbook actually around just my thoughts on productizing. So, best place is just productized.services. That's my site. The playbook's just on the homepage. It's just a free download that you can get. It's kind of a good primer on a lot of stuff we talked about today and just productizing, etc. But that's usually the best place. Some activity on Instagram, I share some stuff, but mainly it's just website and my email list. That's one of the best ways where I share a lot of different ideas, insights, strategies. But that playbook is probably the best place to possibly start on the journey.
Perfecto. Well, much appreciated. And last thing, final thoughts. The stage is yours. It could be a quote. It could be a line. You can sing if you want. Whatever you want. Send us home here.
Don't beat yourself up trying to build a service business or a full service agency. Work to productize, specialize, do something streamlined, say no, build something that's scalable. So
all of that in that specific order. Thank you so much, Tyler, for coming on the show, sharing your amazing productizing service tips. And thank you, wild listeners, for tuning into another episode. If you want to hear more wild stories like this one, make sure to follow the Wild Business Growth Podcast on your favorite app and tell a friend about the podcast. You can also find us on Good Pods, where you can check out some really, really good podcasts awesome people are listening to. And for any help with podcast production, you can learn more at MaxPodcasting.com. Until next time, let your business run wild.
Bring on the bongos!